Hey folks, we are back live at livecoding.ca. My name is Nick Taylor. I'm a staff engineer at Netlify, and I'm hanging with my buddy Dan Ott today. Hey Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm Dan. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I live in Lakewood, Ohio, actually. So it's the first suburb west of Cleveland. And I've been doing web development for over 20 years. I do front end development mostly. I am an independent uh, contractor, I guess. And yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I'm also a maintainer at Virtual Coffee. And so you can find me there we do a podcast, and Virtual Coffee is a well, we had Nick and I had planned out this whole thing, and I already train wrecked the whole thing, but I'll talk about what Virtual
I
Coffee
try.
is. Well,
I ruined.
yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I do web development. I do stuff at Virtual Coffee, and some streaming stuff, some podcast stuff, and just generally try to have fun in life.
Cool, cool. Well, again, thanks for hopping on, Dan. I know I had you on the dev stream a while ago, which I almost introduced this stream as. And yeah, getting back to before we start digging into stuff, I can explain what happened. So I'm using a new thing for the video and audio. So it's Video Ninja, which is a really great project. And in OBS, which is what I use to control everything, you can turn on like when what people hear that gets sent out, you can control that in OBS, but you can also hear that audio to yourself if you want to. But the way I'm set up, I had it turned off in the OBS because I can hear Dan through the web browser, which is where I see his video. And then when I turned on the closed captioning, it's an I have to talk. This is actually a good preemptive thing to say that like me, Dan, and probably some folks are gonna talk about how we set up streams, but I'm using live captioning using something called webcaptioner.com, and it runs in only in Chrome. And when that runs, I have to feed this virtual microphone in that doesn't. It basically mutes some audio for some reason. So I had turned off the other thing in OBS. Anyways, basically, my bad. That's the TLDR. So, but anyways, we're here, and yeah, we got a few things tweaked. So the video setup's a lot easier now in terms of just having a guest on, because like if, for folks who've watched my stream or even the dev stream, I used to use Discord all the time, and it worked good, but there was issues. The main issue is when you have somebody, a guest that shares stuff. That's typically the main issue. And so I finally found a good setup I'm happy with, and it might change, but anyways, yeah, before we get started, I'm gonna just drop a little message to give Dan a follow on Twitter. Yeah, so now that I've completely distracted the entire stream from what we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, I don't know anything you want. I am
Yeah, yeah.
so at Virtual Coffee we have a podcast, and we just finished up like our fifth season. So we do seasons. We I This was my idea, and I still don't know if it was a good idea or not. But we decided to do seasons as in like Earth seasons. So we have four
Okay.
seasons a year. But we just finished up our fifth season, and so we are recording for our next one, and it's been a really good time. But this morning we, in the middle of the
Okay.
podcast, did the same thing where we recorded, where we talked about microphones. For I sidetracked us for like a good 5 minutes talking to Bogdan about microphones and things like that. So I
Gotcha,
just kind of
gotcha.
live in a constant stream of distraction, so it's all good for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, speaking of virtual coffee, we're gonna get into. We're gonna talk about the website for virtual coffee, but for folks that don't know, I'm a member of virtual coffee as well. But for folks that might not know what virtual coffee is, Dan, I guess can you give the TLDR in your best words?
Yeah, Virtual Coffee is a community of developers, for developers of all stages of the coding journey. And it was started by Becca Harrod Weigel 2 years ago, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. She started it as sort of just a Zoom. She was just hosting Zooms that she would post on Twitter and things like that. And it started to grow, and things snowballed as as they do sometimes. And So yeah, so now
Yeah.
we have a sort of large community. It's right now it's based mostly on Slack, and excuse me, we do lots of learning things together. We try to foster like intimate connections with between developers,
Yeah.
and yeah, within that we do a lot of events. We do a lot of events inside the community. We do some events that are posted to the public. We do lightning talks and well, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, so I mentioned the podcast. We do the podcast. We have a streaming. We have a Twitch thing that we do. I think it's Virtual Coffee IO, just like on Twitter. And wait, I just started with Kirk. Kirk is one of the other maintainers here at Virtual Coffee, and I started
Yeah.
a new stream with him called TypeScript Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, we're talking about TypeScript, and um, TypeScript is new for me, and Kirk has been long into the strongly typed languages stuff, both TypeScript and otherwise, and so it's kind of a fun adventure there too. So
That's
I
cool.
don't know if
That's
that
cool.
answered your question, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's good TLDR of Virtual Coffee and all the things it's been up to. Yeah, I've been a fan of VC for a while too, man. Like I didn't I wasn't at the like literal first Virtual Coffee, but I think I was either the second or third one. I couldn't make the initial one. I had DM'd Becca on Twitter and I said, hey, I'd love to join, because at this point there was no Slack or anything. It was just Becca saying, hey, if you want to join the Virtual Coffee, just send me a DM so on Twitter. And I think I had something going on with work, so I had to cancel. But I said, hey, I'll see you at the next one. And then yeah, the rest is history. Met a lot of great folks like yourself, Dan, TK. The handles always
TK, yes.
the handles always throw me off. Kirk, I did that to Prince Wilson as well, who's my coworker now. But his handle on Twitter and Twitch, I think, is Maxell. So he was
Oh yeah.
when I was doing the dev stream, he was commenting about something, and I was like, and Max something something. And I was like, nope, that's not it. That's not it.
Yeah, well,
But
Kirk was known. I didn't even know his name was Kirk for a long. He was TK at Virtual Coffee for the first, I don't know, while. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
I
like
called
calling
him
him TK is
TK
like
for
a
the whole
threat.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I called him
I
TK
like it.
until one day I don't know if he just said my name's actually Kirk or something. Like, I don't know, but
Yeah, well, he changed it to Kirk in Slack, and that was like a big moment. We were all like, "Whoa, who's this guy?"
yeah, yeah, kind of like when Prince changed his name to a symbol, same kind of thing, right?
It's exactly
Like,
like that. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Prince
yeah,
and Kirk exist in the same sort of space in my head for sure.
yeah, 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 for sure. Cool, cool. I tried to take a sip of coffee and I didn't. Yeah, so
Well done.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Poorly executed, even though it looked smooth. Um, yeah, so I guess let's talk about the Virtual Coffee website. So I know you recently, I don't know how recent, maybe a month or two ago, you decided to make the move to Remix. I'm gonna drop a link to Remix in the chat, but if you want to give like a maybe just I can mention it if not, but like what Remix is, it's another React meta framework. But I guess what were some of the reasons you thought it'd be a good idea to move over to something like Remix?
Yeah, so the site started. It was very simple when it started. Honestly, we put it up so that we'd have something, and we started doing like Virtual Coffee kind of became more of a thing, less of a hangout, more of a thing around Hacktoberfest 20,
Yeah,
2020,
yeah,
2021,
that's right. Yeah,
2020, 2020. Sorry, I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what is.
No, yeah, it
Anyway,
was 2020. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So and it was at that time an 11D site when we started, and I love 11D. So 11D is a static site generator, and so um, there's a lot of benefits to that. And what that mostly means is when you build the site, that pretty much it behind the scenes builds a bunch of HTML flat HTML pages and pretty much locks in. The idea is it locks in your content then, right? And
yeah,
so to make a change to the site, you make a change in. I mean, for us at least, make a change in the GitHub repo, push it up, and behind the scenes it builds and publishes a new version of the site. Um,
yeah,
and that was great. And 11 is awesome, and I love it. but one of the like things that becomes hard with that sort of setup is the more dynamic things get, the like more you have to do weird stuff or hard to explain stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
Another piece that I was sort of viewing as a downside, one of the goals of the VC site is to make it so that it can be a open source, and it is open source, but an open source project that our members can, well, anybody can contribute to.
Yeah.
And I was finding it hard to explain things like we used nunjucks as the templating language, and I would have to sort of explain what nunjucks was a lot. And
Okay.
it's sort of hard to parse sometimes the tooling around it, like in VS Code. The there's plugins for it, but they're not great. Can't really use prettier on it, things like that. So there were some minor downsides, but one of the bigger reasons. So there's like this. There's two reasons why we moved to Remix, and I'll kind of talk about Remix in a second. But uh,
Yeah.
so one of them is like a lot more people are more familiar with React, JavaScript in general, React in specific, and it's a little easier to point to things like other examples of React sites or React components or things like that than Nunjucks,
Yeah.
templates, etc. And then the other side is we're starting to move some more stuff to an actual CMS, and you definitely
Okay.
can build. You can build. You can use 11D or other static site generators from a CMS, and so when you do a build, it will go to that CMS, pull all the entries down, and rebuild the site. I'm simplifying, and there's there's some other pieces in there that I'm glossing over, but that's the basic idea,
Yeah.
right? And so with the CMS, when you hit save on some entry to get it onto the site, you have to hook up like some sort of webhook to wherever the site is building and have it rebuild. There's ways in
Yeah.
11D to have it rebuild just pieces instead of the whole thing, which is cool, but there's still kind of a lot of different pipes connected together in weird ways, right? And with Remix, we can have the site uh, grab that content, at runtime. So when a user visits the site,
Yeah.
by default, it'll grab the freshest version of the thing. So when I hit save on an entry, I can go refresh the page, basically, and the new content will be there. So if there's a typo or something like that, for instance,
Okay.
we still have a bunch of content that's in the repo in Remix. So it's kind of a mixed bag right now, and then we're still in
Okay.
transition kind of phase with the content, but that's kind of the
Okay.
idea. Yeah,
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I use 11e for my blog. I think it's a great tool, and I know you're not throwing shade at 11D with all the stuff you just mentioned there.
yeah, no,
It's all about trade-offs, and also like even like I mean 11D has some newer stuff. I know this just because I work with the person that created it, but like there's like edge functions. There's more SSR story stuff coming in, but um, it's not 11D also isn't built to do everything. It's not like a tool for everything necessarily. Just
yeah,
like
absolutely.
just like other things, like some other tool might not make sense in a certain context or your use case. But I think one of the things you leaned on was like React being like a lot of folks are you know know that or are learning it. A lot of boot camps teach that and stuff, and that's like a lot of the audience like that we have a virtual coffee, or not all the audience, but like there's a good chunk of folks who are starting off their career, and just learning web dev in general, and there's obviously other things than React out there, but like you said, there was reasons, and there's a lot more dynamicism, if I'm saying that right, to the. I feel like super scholarly now that I just said that, um, but yeah, there's a lot going on basically now. It's not
Yeah,
because I remember the site originally, it was pretty static. We had like a
right.
members section at one point, which was still fairly static. I think I remember we were doing PRs to like update our content, and now I think we just pull it straight from GitHub. I'm not positive about that, but um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and excuse me, you mentioned dynamicism,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, one of the other big reasons that was driving my move to Remix was um, having in the future like some plans that are not concrete yet to have uh, places where people can log in and see things, live and things like that. So that's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just, you're gonna have to put something in there with 11D. That's not 11D anymore to do that, right? To have like a
yeah,
live, live stuff. So that's the other reason.
yeah.
And I also had been wanting to dive in, and it was a good excuse to do that too. So
Yeah,
there's
exactly. There's a
a
developer
little bit
itch
of
as well.
that going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
exactly.
I hear you. At work, because like at Netlify, wor- I get to work with all these frameworks, and I don't know Remix super well yet. I've been working on like uh, integrating our edge functions into it, but so like it's kind of funny. I've been like working with it under the hood a bit, but I haven't actually built a site per se with it. So like I understand like and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this stuff here, but like there seems to be a shift in web dev going back to air quotes the way it was because like for folks who've been doing web development for a long time, you saw a shift. Like everything used to be server side rendered. You had sprinkles of JavaScript, which was like alerts, confirms, and all that stuff. You had fun stuff like marquee and frame sets and all that. And I don't know if image maps are still used, but I remember it's just my thoughts, but I'm guessing this is how it progressed. Was like I remember in 2005, that's when the term Ajax got coined by, I don't know why I remember this, but this guy Jesse James Garrett, he coined the term, and it was asynchronous JavaScript and XML, which makes no sense in the context today because we're shooting JSON down the pipe. Um, but I remember like servers were still slow, broadband internet still was kind of somewhat in its infancy. Like I'd say mid 90s or like 1996 is like, because I remember when I was at university my first year, that's when I got broadband, and that's like Napster was there, and then that's like everybody
Oh yeah,
downloaded like literally every song on the planet. But that's, you know even at that point, like server, people were always talking about like, well, the page takes too long to load, or like we need it to be more dynamic and stuff. And that's when you ended up with these things where it's like, okay, some kind of shell of the app, and then maybe or you've already loaded the page, but then all of a sudden you're making these Ajax requests to get these little bits updating and so on. And then we went kind of like the full other way, which was like literally load everything client side aside from a tiny shell of HTML, which is how we got single page applications, SPAs, as folks know them. But, and then that was determined bad in a lot of contexts. I mean, I think there's still valid applications of it, but and then it's like all of a sudden we shifted back to like let's go back to the server, and then like and it's just kind of funny how tech goes in ways like that. So we're
yeah,
so Remix is kind of in that vein where server render a lot of stuff, eh, progressive web enhancement, kind of like out of the box. Like I think their tagline on the site somewhere is like, don't use event dot prevent default on the forums, or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
But
Uh,
but yeah, so,
yeah, yeah. No, that's totally right. And Remix is, so you mentioned single page applications and everything that I mean, everything you said was right. And the big frameworks, so like there's React and there's frameworks that are built on top of React. And so Create React App, I don't
yeah,
know if you'd call that a framework, but that's like a baseline like thing to make single page apps. And there's
yeah.
Next.js. What else is there?
Well, there's
So I'm
like
trying to think of another one on top of that.
there's
Doesn't
other. I
matter.
mean, there's Blitz, which
There's
is
other ones.
built off
Oh yeah,
of
Blitz.
Next.js, I
Yeah, yeah,
think. But I think
yeah.
somebody told me that Blitz is not going to be based off of Next anymore. There's other
Hmm.
ones like Redwood JS. There's these are
Mhm.
non-React ones now, but you got like Svelte.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I still haven't really done any Vue, but there's like Nuxt.js. There's just Vue
Hmm.
in general, and anything that's
Yeah,
Vue centric. There's a
yeah.
lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And so like one of the things that like the thing, static site generators like 11 you were trying to solve was that, right? Is okay, we want to be able to write code in more dynamic way and maybe in JavaScript, but we don't want to have the user just like load an empty div and then load a bunch of JavaScript on top of it, right? And
Yeah.
so a single page app, or sorry, not a single page app, but a static site generated site will static
Yeah.
static site generator. Yeah. Anyway, will bust out a bunch of HTML pages. So when you visit a page on on one of those sites, you're getting that content like live, right? And
Yeah.
that's traditionally been hard to do. And so Next solved that by having these pages. They call them pages, and you can have server side like code run and feed those pages, right? And so those pages
Yeah.
no longer. So one of the other benefits, one of the other nice things about single page apps is you can host them on a static host, like a host that doesn't actually run code on the like
Yeah.
on the server that the user is visiting, right? And Netlify like started out like that, and there's other ones too. And so it simplified the hosting situation, right? I could share just
Yeah.
a folder, and the whole thing would work, theoretically.
Yeah.
Um, and so with Next.js, you have the option of, so you can't, like, if you have the server side stuff turned on, you can't do that anymore. Any pages that have server side stuff have to have a server behind them to run, right?
Yeah.
And with Remix, it's all like that. Like I think I might be saying this incorrectly, but my understanding is that you really can't run Remix on a static host. You need a server.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's right. Yeah.
like Netlify gets around that by using some cool function stuff that you don't have to, like, that they do in the background. You don't have to mess around with it. Remix has tools built to run on Netlify, and lots of other hosts too. But the pages run when you
Sorry,
write code on your. Oh, what's up?
I'm laughing because you're not mentioning the other people aside from Netlify.
Oh, well, that's because, okay, yeah. So I only say that, I'm not even saying that because you work for Netlify. It's because I literally like try to only use Netlify because I love it so much.
Nice.
Vercel is one of the other ones. Vercel is the company that owns Next.js, and they have a hosting situation that's similar to Next, or not similar to Netlify. It's just the one that's in my brain. It's my default. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Um,
I used it before I worked there, but your point about the servers is right. Like, I mean, uh, Netlify or Cloudflare or Vercel, they're not like, they're all serverless basically, or you use Edge. So like that's because like,
right.
so like the other option is you run a node server, which is another option. But so they're
Right.
all serverless, just in different. They're all server based, but just in different contexts. So
Totally. And like trying to hook that up by yourself is a huge pain. And that's why we try to avoid it too. And that's another reason why like the SPAs like became popular, because you don't have to think about it.
mhm.
You know what I mean? And when you're running Create React App, or at least I haven't used it for a little while, but like at least in the past, locally, when you're running it locally,
Yeah,
the local host isn't running any code. Like it's not, it's just a static little host that's on your computer. And
yeah,
that means you can pump it anywhere that can host a web page with no backend code at all, and it'll work great. And so that was like a really nice feature of it. And so Remix is kind of
yeah,
the combination of those two. So you get to write your code in React. You don't have to um, do any weird stuff, and it all works really well. And they've
yeah,
piped together like the other thing that was hard in the past is things like, so with React, if you have data displayed when the page loads, right? So the
yeah,
SPA version is like you have, like we said, the empty div or whatever, and then it loads stuff, makes same API calls, whatever. It loads a bunch of markup and sticks it with JavaScript into that empty div. With
yeah,
Remix, or not just Remix, but with a server generated site, the initial version, at least, of the code exists on the server to, like, exists when you hit that web page. If you view source on that web page, that code will be there, like the list of blog posts or whatever.
yeah,
And so with React, if you need to, so if you're going to do that, what you need to do is have the server generate the exact same code that the first time the JavaScript runs, it outputs the exact same thing, right? And that's,
yeah,
they call that, that means you need to feed it the exact same data, and they like hydrating is part of this. And we don't need to dive too deep into it, but it's also a pain to do, or it was,
yeah, yeah,
and so Next.js handles this really well. And Remix also handled it awesome. But the other side that Remix, they've been concentrating on going back to like HTTP
Yeah.
stuff, and using those scenarios just like we used when, I don't know if you ever did any PHP or any like backend stuff before you got deep
Yeah.
into JavaScript,
Yeah.
but like
It was.
it feels like that, and it's amazing because like there's a lot of cool client side stuff like that you can't do without it being a huge pain if you're going to write a PHP app, for instance, because the code
Yeah.
that is generating the server stuff is going to be different than the code that's like running the JavaScript. And so um, here it's just the
Yeah.
one page, and it's both the server side and the client side stuff, and it is like by default, happening like handling all the different routes and form submissions and everything like that. They expect you to return like HTTP codes that make sense, and you can
Yeah.
actually use them, and all this stuff. It's like kind of, it's pretty magical, and I like it.
Yeah. AKA the way the web's supposed to work, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. No, it's interesting about because when I was working at Dev 2, so like uh, we were using Preact. The back end was Rails. So like when you're in the context of just like full stack JavaScript, that's different. But like in the case of this, it was like server side rendered Rails, like Dev 2. If for folks who ever visit Dev 2 is blazing fast, and the reason why it is because we server render and it's cached heavily. And then you have like what's called like we use like it's called the islands architecture. So like if you think of like a React app, like I don't know. I think Dan froze. I'm not sure, unless he's just very. Oh no, you're that still, really? Okay,
I'm
wow.
listening. I'm listening. I'm wrapped. I want to
No,
know
no, no.
where you're
That's good.
going.
That's good. I was freaking out because I was like, oh my god, I think my
Sorry.
internet just went down. Um, no, it's all good. It's all good. You would be a great statue. Um,
That's
yeah, no. So what we do is like you render all this markup, and it's pretty fast because it's already in the markup. And then we would use, like I was saying, the island architecture. So it's really like you have pockets of your interactivity in the application, and newer frameworks are doing this, like Solid JS and Quick, which are two newer ones. But that's kind of what we were doing. And I had these issues where, like, because you write the components in Preact, which is written with JSX in JavaScript, and then you have the server rendered markup. And I ran into situations sometimes where you would see two of the same components show up sometimes, and the reason would be is because if there was just enough difference in the server rendered markup, the way Preact would bootstrap is it would just like add it after it, and like so you'd end up with one that didn't have any interactivity, and then the other one would work because you bootstrap all like the event listeners and stuff. Um but I'm not sure who Ange244 is, but happy to see you as well. Somebody who just gave a follow. I think it might be my old coworker, but I'm not positive. Um, but yeah, and I worked in .NET before that, and it's kind of the same thing. You're rendering server side stuff, but it's coming from C Sharp and ASP.NET or ASP.NET MVC. So you have that disconnect. And so again, you're just kind of like you have to bolt on that interactivity after, and uh, definitely like I feel like I don't know if you ever used a framework called Meteor. It came out in like 2014 or 2015. It was basically it's actually the company Meteor became I forget what they got renamed after, but they ended up being the people that created the Apollo project for GraphQL. Um, but I should have worn my Meteor shirt today. But
nice.
anyways, point is, back in like 2015, they had what they called it universal JavaScript. So this was the whole server render, in Node, and then you do stuff in the front end, and then there was shared functionality with the back end and the front end, and it worked really nice. It's still around. Like, I don't know Scott Tolinsky, but I know Scott Tolinsky from just listening to the Syntax FM podcast, and I know the level up tutorials. Oh, Agilos. Okay, yeah. Hey, how's it going, man? Sorry, I just figured out who Ange244 is. Um, yeah, so like I remember Scott Tilinsky was a big fan of it, and Level Up's tutorials was using Meteor for the longest time, and then I think Scott likes to change his stack up a lot, so I think it's on SvelteKit right now. I can't remember, but anyways, it was kind of like, this whole universal thing, and this is kind of where like React server components and like hydration are coming into. You want to be able to, and I know even Remix is using server components in some capacity right now, or I know they're not completely ready React server components, I believe. So folks who are using them, like even Next.js is, it's I think air quotes experimental to some degree. But I did have a point to this at some point. but anyways, yeah, like it's getting back to that like render server side because it's faster now, and then you just sprinkle on the interactivity where you need it, versus like if you think of something like a single page app, like even though it starts off with this shell of HTML, you have this componentry. So you have this like single entry point where your app starts. Typically, like if you use Code Sandbox or even Create React App, it starts off with an app component, and then your whole componentry builds, and everything is dependent on that. Like it, and versus if you server side render and you just say like, oh, I'm gonna bolt some JavaScript here and do whatever I need to do. It's a huge difference in how things operate. So that was my point.
Yeah, totally, totally. And like a lot of that stuff, I don't want to think about really most of the time, honestly. I mean, like I love learning about it and everything, but that's one of the cool spots we're in right now with React is the tools that are coming out are not really honestly pointed at like individual developers that are like me, you know what I mean? They're pointed at the people that are
Yeah,
making making Remix and making Next and stuff like that. And that's the ideal. So
yeah,
like I like being at that higher level. I know that like it's not, I don't speak for everybody, obviously, you know what I mean? But I like living at that higher level. I
yeah,
don't want to mess with server configuration ever in my life again if I can avoid it. You know what I mean? I don't want to like
yeah,
configure
yeah,
Webpack. I mean, nobody does, but like the, and that's why I like using uh, Next.js and Remix, in particular, because, and I was using Create React App before that for the same
yeah,
reason, right? There's a lot of this stuff, and the more that the tools can do for me, the better, right? Remix, like
yeah,
I was when I first was like, oh, I want to try out Remix. I wasn't sure if it would work on Netlify without a bunch of hacking. You know what I mean?
okay,
But they took care of it for me. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I love
we
that.
we, we
And so
got
this
your
is the
back.
same
We
thing
got your
with,
back.
yeah, yeah. This is the same thing. Like the Remix. So is Remix is handling the hydration stuff that, so I don't have to think about it. It's handling all the
Yeah,
different routing and the data loading. I mean, I tell it what data to load, but it's handling the um, so imagine if you're writing a PHP app or some sort of traditionally rendered server side app and you wanted React on
yeah,
top of it, just like you're saying, right? So you in your like PHP page, I keep saying PHP because that was what I used back in the day. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
my mental model for this. But like there you would call the data or load the data from database or whatever and output it, and then also separately, you have to write a separate thing that calls the same data in JavaScript on the client side if you want to update it later, right? If you want to refresh
yeah,
it or whatever. And here it's just one thing. And Remix is grabbing the data at the initial like load and also like grabbing it to refresh it on the client side. And
yeah,
once you've like, if as a user, once you've loaded a page in a Remix app and you go and you navigate to another page inside the same
yeah,
Remix app, it's not going to do a full page refresh like it would on a PHP app by default, right? It will
yeah,
only load the data and the React components, in and stick it in the right spot without having to do that, without having to do anything. So if you are on
okay,
Virtual Coffee and go to from the homepage, go to the members page or something like that, it's not a whole page refresh. And it's not like loading all of the markup from that second page. It's loading the
yeah.
data in a XHR, in an Ajax. I still call it Ajax response, but like
Yeah,
it's loading the data, and it probably has excuse me, already loaded the JavaScript. And if not, it'll load it, on the fly.
yeah,
And and that page, when you've gotten to it, is not server-side rendered. If you hit refresh, then you'll get the server-side rendered version. But once you're
Yeah,
in there, you're all on client-side stuff. So it's as if you were in a total single-page app, just React components and data loading.
yeah,
But if you hit refresh on
but
any of those pages, you'll get the
the form,
service-generated version. Or if you turn off JavaScript, everything will
you'll
still
get the
work.
server.
Ideally, I
Yeah,
mean,
that and
like
that.
if you have
Yeah,
like fancy UI stuff, that might not work with JavaScript turned off. But that's the like idea there is so for a form, for example, if you go to
yeah,
a form and turn off JavaScript in a Remix app and hit submit, it'll still work. And I, as
yeah,
the developer, don't have to do anything to like ensure that that happens or make special handling cases. Um,
yeah,
it's just like, and that's how the web, kind of should be, in my opinion, too.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's good
yeah.
stuff.
No, for sure. And we'll load up some code in a minute. Just maybe we can kind of walk through a page. I don't know if you can think of a page that might be good to kind
Let me
of
think about
we
it.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there's no rush. But yeah, no, and it's also a friendly reminder, like, so say JavaScript is disabled and like Dan was saying, you can submit the form. This just a friendly reminder that you need to validate not only on the client side but also on the server side. So like if you submit your form and with like erroneous data, you definitely want that checked uh, on the server side.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know a
for
lot of
sure.
folks know this, but I'm mentioning it more for like if folks are newer and doing mainly front end, it's just something you need to take into account. But and this ties into what you were saying, like the progressive web enhancement, right? So like I personally don't know anybody that turns off JavaScript. I know there are certain scenarios where people will for whatever reason. So it is nice that you can still support that. And honestly, like, I mean, sure, you might not be able to validate client side or whatever. You just have to submit by form and get like an error message back. But there's a lot of stuff you can still do on the front end, even with JavaScript disabled, especially because like so many advancements in CSS these days. Like, I don't know if for anybody in the stream, if you're not following Jay Tompkins, he works at Google now, but he's like just phenomenal with just animations and stuff. There are things where he does use JavaScript, like GSAP and all that, but like just pure CSS out of the box, you can do animations, keyframes and all that. There's a lot of stuff you can still do to make things interactive and not even have JavaScript enabled. But I still personally have never seen anybody have JavaScript disabled. But I know it's definitely something you need to think about depending on. Well, I think from an accessibility standpoint, you should be able to be progressively enhancing your pages. But to be honest, I don't think everybody does it. There's no candy coding it. I worked at places before 2016 where accessibility was never even talked about. It's like only in later years where it's like people are like, yeah, we should do that. So it's like, anyways, I'm going on a weird tangent there potentially, but okay, so I guess uh, did you run into any issues when you did the migration, or like, or what were like maybe some pain points when you started working with
Yeah, sure.
Remix?
So um, I the site was slower to start. One of
Okay.
the like this is one of the huge benefits of a static site is that it's going to be blazing fast. Like it will
Yeah.
be the fastest it can probably be because there's nothing happening on the server. The server doesn't have to do any work. It just
Yeah.
except for reading an HTML file, and then it dumps it out to the browser. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so if you move from that to something that is actually doing work, like calling a CMS or things like that,
Yeah.
it's going to be slower all the time. And so the way that we handle this is by caching, um, and that works really well. And like caching is, when I mean caching, I say like HTTP caching, which is
Okay.
a
Yeah.
technology that's been around for a long, long, long time, way before React was a thing, way before, probably before JavaScript was. I'm not really sure about that, but like a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And browsers understand it inherently, and then also CDNs understand it, and that's the real key. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can set cache levels for different events and different like you can tell the browser to only cache this for a short amount of time, but tell the CDN to cache it for later, longer, and things like that. And um, remixes, they have a lot of good videos and tutorials about using that, but you can lean on that instead of doing like any sort of weird configuration, or you don't have to like do a bunch of um, uh, I don't know, esoteric things or remix specific things at all, right?
Yeah.
What you're doing is leaning on that stuff. So that was like one of the pain points. Another one is since it's not a static site generator, it's not built to like read a bunch of files by
Yeah.
default. Like
Gotcha.
11D is you don't have to add anything to have it like automatically read all of your markdown files and build a site. You know what I mean? That's what
Sweet.
it's made for. And
Yeah.
so I had to write some stuff, and it wasn't that hard once I like worked my head around it. But um, basically, like reading in the files and outputting them,
Sweet.
because we still have static pages, we still have content in the repo or
Yeah.
markdown files, and so serving those was took me a little bit to figure out, but
Okay.
so like if your site, like if you have a blog and that's all you have on it, and like it's just a bunch of markdown or MDX files or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't think I would suggest switching to Remix. You know what I mean? I don't think it'll be better,
Okay.
because it's not made for that, right? It's like that's but if your blog is on a CMS, you might start thinking about it, because then you could
Yeah.
edit a typo and not have to rebuild
Yeah.
your whole site and things like that. But
Yeah.
so it's always a trade-off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, and I'm glad you brought that up again. It's like not every tool is perfect for literally every scenario. So like, it's like you're not gonna. I don't know. It's like the stereotypical picture of like somebody trying to like hammer in a square through the triangle kind of thing. It's if that's the proper analogy. Those kid tools with the blocks. But anyways, but I know what you mean. It's like they all do things. Some things do things really well for a lot of things, but there's certain cases where it just might not make sense. Like, and I'll go back to like my blog for a second. Like I am using 11D there. It's literally all static aside from like I have some Google Analytics and like I think I have I have a small piece of JavaScript for like my turning my theme on and off, like to switch dark and light. But aside from that, it's literally all markdown. I'm pulling from Dev 2 and I'm just generating static pages. So for me, and like in that scenario, it's like 100% perfect. So
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, no, so
And
it's cool.
it's also just a new mental model, a new paradigm, and so learning
Yeah.
something from scratch is always going to be a little bit of a challenge. It's fun, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that was my biggest challenge, was the static the static content. And like the one of the nice things that Leavenly does is when it reads a folder of content, a folder of blog posts or whatever, it will make that list available to you everywhere on the
Yeah.
site, every other page that you're building. And so you can use that to output navigation, things like that. Remix doesn't
Yeah.
have any of that stuff built in. And there's still like, and it's not the priority, you know what I mean? And it's not like what it's
Yeah.
for, really. So I had to do some interesting things. Maybe I missed, there's always possible I just missed something, or there has been new
Yeah.
things that have come out since this is a couple months ago, and it's still a new-ish product that they're still pumping out new stuff all the time, obviously. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, I guess
you know,
like in the scenario of like the navigation and stuff for like some small user data, are you currently using like a provider or something in React, or are you not even bothering with that right now? Or
no, you don't need a provider so much as so the Remix is uses this paradigm of loaders, right? And so a loader is
yeah.
if you set a loader on a route, that means anytime you hit that route, that loader is going to run and provide data to the route. And you can
Okay.
always provide, so if it's high up, uh, the child routes like have access to it. Okay,
Okay.
so that's something you like can pretty easily do. And I don't think there's any providers. I don't think there's any contacts of providers in the VC app. That might be wrong now that I say that, but
Okay.
it's not like because um, you don't need them anymore in Remix as much, um, because it's all the data loading is based on routes, right? So,
Okay.
um, so when you load a new page, um, the data, it will go up the tree of the routes. Any routes that changed, reload the data or freshly load it and provide it to those routes, and it'll go down the
Okay.
nest. But it doesn't set. It's not set to go back up the nest, and that's sort of been
Okay.
a challenge. So if you're on like the podcasts page, right?
Okay.
I have to like load that separately on the root if I want to list some podcast episodes on the index page. Right? Does that
Okay.
make sense?
So yeah, yeah, and
So,
I I thought it was a good segue. I'm just sharing. I have my
oh,
VS
cool.
Code open at the moment, but I was just sharing like one of the pages. But I'm on the podcast page now, and just because like I'm enjoying the conversation. It's not that. It's I'm just trying to throw some code up there so folks can kind of
Just
maybe
tuning out.
associate to what we're talking about. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and
So, all right.
yeah,
So this is great. In a new tab, open up the index, the route, the like homepage. Should just be index in routes. So
okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's
Uh,
not called home. It's just called routes/index. And
oh yeah, yeah. Okay, here we go. Cool.
there
Yeah,
you go. And so you can see in this load, I just want to look at this for 1 second real quick, but if you scroll down to that loader function just a little bit, you can
yeah,
see here, get episodes. So
yeah,
there might be a better way, like, I don't know, there might be a way to do this, but that's different, but it's loading it here and also loading it in the podcast, like index
sweet.
page, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Excuse me. And so that's one, like, I and like by default, like I think this get episodes is just getting 5 or something like that, and the podcast page gets all of them,
yeah. Okay,
um
yeah, yeah.
but anyway, there's not like a there's not a I would use context in some UI things, you know what I mean? Like like I could see lots of uses for context there, but a lot of the
Yeah,
like tricks and nonsense to use, like, it's not actually nonsense, but like a lot of the crazy things that we've done to load
yeah,
data and send it to other places and use it in different components and stuff like that. You
yeah,
don't need in Remix anymore. You don't need to store any data
yeah,
in Redux. Certainly, you don't need to store any data in context. You don't need to.
yeah.
You don't even really need like use query or anything like that anymore.
React query, you mean? Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah. React Query and or similar. You know what I mean? And I love React Query, but like it's
Yeah,
just not necessary anymore. Um,
okay.
there's like plenty
Can I
of,
ask you a
go ahead.
question
Go
though
ahead.
for a
Yeah.
sec?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you like you're saying don't use not that you shouldn't use it's just it's not necessary. So like React query, Redux, whatever. So i.e. global state, and the reason for that is I'm assuming because the pages are server rendered, so it's not a single page application, obviously, but I guess this makes is Remix consider I guess it's considered a multi-page app, an MPA, because like that's just fancy acronyms. I'm just throwing it out there because if you hear that term, that's the only reason. But what I mean by multi-page app is just literally like this page loads. There's interactivity that you do, like you're rendering certain things. Like if you update certain parts of it, like you were saying, only pockets of the markup will get updated because only like React stuff that needs to really update will update. The rest doesn't re-render the markup; it just stays there. What you were saying initially, like
So
this, like
yeah, that depends on how the routes are set up. So
okay,
it's I haven't heard the term multi-page app, so I'm not sure what all of that implies. But
okay,
the difference, it's really a combination of multi-page app or whatever, traditional app and a single page app. So
okay,
once you load the first page, the behavior is going to be much more like a single page app, much more like you're
okay,
using React Router uh, in a create React
sweet,
app. You know what I mean? Once you load that, once you are like initially in there,
okay,
the the difference is like any page that you go, you'll get the correct like server rendered stuff. When you change a
yeah,
route, any routes that don't match anymore, like, will go away, and any routes that match will get loaded in, and the loader data will like run and be provided. if it needs to.
Yeah. And
And so yeah, so switch over to that podcast one because it's a little more like this index page has a ton of stuff going on because we are
okay.
are loading a bunch of things. But this is just like the I don't know the homepage for the podcast, right? So um, the loader is loading some episodes and also like grabbing some stuff from the first episode, right? And
Yeah. Okay.
so this await get episodes that runs like a well, what it really does is hits a Netlify on demand builder, and then that thing hits our
Okay.
CMS. And then the get player SRC is, I think, just some, I don't know. I don't think that's doing anything fancy. I think it's just building some
Okay.
an iframe or something like that, and then it returns this loader returns JSON. So if
Okay.
you were to, let me see how you could do this. All right, are you able to like load up a browser on the share,
Yeah.
or is that gonna be a pain? Okay.
No, no, it's all good. I'm just gonna drag a window out of my other browser over here because I don't think anybody really wants to see the closed captioning on the stream directly unless you have it turned on. But okay, so all right, so where you want me to go to?
So go to virtualcoffee.io/podcast, I guess.
Okay,
And
podcast.
well, I'm trying to think of what the best way. It's not plural. It's just podcast.
Okay, gotcha.
There we go. Okay, so if you view sort just to illustrate this, I guess, and this view source might be a little ugly, but you'll be able to see.
Oh, I
Um,
thought they removed view page source for a second. Where is it? Oh, it's because I was selecting stuff. No, what? Really? Why is it not showing up? Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right.
oh, it's hard to read, but like if you search for, well, just search for your name because it should show up here.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you can see like a link. This is in the list. So this is like
Yep.
hard coded in the markup, right?
Yep.
So if you go back to, or you can close this really, and if you open Inspector in here
Yep.
and get the like network tab loaded up, and maybe hit uh, refresh, and we'll just like do it
Okay.
from scratch, right?
Okay, cool.
And
So I'm gonna drag
I'm
this up
trying to
here
think of
just
the
so you
right
can
way
see.
to, yeah, I
I
need to
can
bump
filter on this
this
if we need
size
to.
up. Yeah, so what we want to do is just do the fetch XHR, and
Okay.
so you could see now, like by default, it hasn't loaded anything. So if you go to the home page, like click on that link, and
Okay.
then so you can see here the data. All right, so let's start here. Like, all right, let's hit refresh here because this will be a better
Okay.
example. I should have had you do this initially, but
Okay. And it's
all
not
right, so
rendering
we've
there as expected.
right, and
Yep.
so you're gonna have to scroll down a little bit to get our little hamburger menu back. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
just
So.
on the because it doesn't show up when you're all the way scrolled up. We're all
Oh
zoomed
yeah, yeah.
in.
So.
Um, and maybe maybe something
There we
zoomed.
go.
If you just
Okay.
there you go.
We
All right,
got
and
burgers. We got
now
burgers.
through through the nav, go to the podcast again,
Okay.
and in our network tab, you can see now that it has, and you can pull that back up. You can see now that it loaded this data, and if you want to look at this, if you look at the response, um, the
Okay.
this is the JSON, this is the data that built this page, right? And so we didn't do a full page
Yeah.
refresh like you would on some old PHP app or something like that. But
Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything fancy on my end to have this work. And so the loader, so if you go back to VS Code, like this is what the loader returns. And so this thing feeds both the initial page load and it feeds that route later,
Okay.
not
Okay.
from not from the initial page load,
S-
but just as an individual network response with just that
Okay.
JSON, right? It's not like this thing is building a bunch of HTML and returning that, and it's just sticking it in or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like this has turned into it's both an API route and uh, I don't know,
and
a
like,
data function that serves its own thing, right? So
okay, gotcha.
in Next.js to like do this, you'd have to have server side. You'd have to have, what is it? Get server side props that gets the same data, and also make an API route that gets the same data. Okay, you'd have to build it
Yeah,
twice, basically, in Next to do this.
gotcha.
And I'm not like picking on Next because I love Next too, and it's just like one of those differences. And this is one of the, like the magical
Yeah,
things that Remix does. And so actions are what you do for forms or anything where you're submitting data, or things like that. Loader is always just
yeah,
get requests, and actions are mutations, I guess, if you want to call it that. But
yeah,
they sort of act the same way. You do some stuff, and if you do it via a whole page load, it'll work like you expect it to.
yeah.
And if you do it, in something that looks a little more modern, where you have like a loader and just a little piece of it gets replaced, it'll be like that.
Okay.
So I don't know
No,
if any of
that's
that makes
nice.
sense,
It's
but
No, it does make sense. I didn't realize that the loader ended up becoming an API on the client side. Like I knew it was pulling in stuff client side, but I didn't actually make the connection. And this gets back to what I was saying, where like, because at work right now, I all I had been doing is like working on integrating edge functions into, well, edge functions are already in Remix. It's just I'm doing some work on it, but I haven't really built anything with Remix yet, aside from like sample sites which have a loader, yes, but I didn't really build anything extensive. So I didn't clue in that the loader becomes the API on the client side, but that does make complete sense. And yeah, like you were
yeah,
saying, and it's not even necessarily Next.js, just other apps. If you were to do this, you have to wrap the same functionality, and then in this case, you'd say like on the server side, load it up, but also that same wrapped functionality having
yeah,
the
you'd have
API
to,
call.
yeah, yeah,
So
and like you wouldn't just have to make an API route in Next.js. You'd also have to add in uh, use like a React query or some other thing to pull it in, as a,
oh yeah,
a
get
fan,
props
and like
or
return it. Well, server side props to like do the server side generated part, and then a
yeah,
whole bunch of mess to have this work on the client side too. And here you don't have to do any of that, because if you scroll down just a little bit to the page component,
yeah,
so here's podcast index. And so this first hook called use loader data, right? And so this is where
yeah,
the data comes from. And this is happening on the server side and happening on the client side, without me having to do anything about it or care. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, no,
Like
for
I
sure.
don't have to do any special handling, whether it's server side or client side. And
Okay,
Remix just knows to, like you saw it when you navigate to a new page, it's just pulling the data down. And if we navigate to a page that had a bunch of routes that had different,
yeah,
um, indexes or whatever, like uh, a route doesn't necessarily have to be exactly a page. And if you had, so you could see in your the folder here, we're in app/routes/podcast, /index,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
if this is like pretty low level, but if you went a route deeper, so if we had I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but like if we had another folder inside podcast, right, and some other section, you know what I mean? Um,
yeah,
you can make it so you could have the like folder route still load this data and provide it down below, and also that route could have its own loaders, and they're all going to work without having to do
yeah.
anything fancy.
And I'm just gonna pause you there for a sec to just to, if folks didn't clue in, so like Dan was saying, there's the loader functions here, that does load the data server side, that renders all the static markup, and then it, like he was showing before, on the client side it actually uses an API call, but where it's getting called it's something under the hood in Remix, but use loader data knows to get the data from the loader data function up here, which I just scrolled by. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
and then there was something else I want. Oh yeah, and what you were just talking about now, you're talking about nested routes, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
and Seth put this in the, hey Seth, but he put this in the chat too. There's a pathless layer out. So there's like, you can wrap, and we're doing this in, so if you see in your folder browser, there's a simple MDX, little like under routes.
yeah,
And so there's pages in here. There's just a few simple ones, and they're simple MDX files, right? But slash
Yeah.
about, like, so if you go to slash about, it's just our about page, right? But this,
Yeah.
if you in the folder browser scroll down a little bit to simple mdx.jsx, which is a file, so it's not inside this folder. It's going to be on the same level. So you're gonna have to
Yeah.
scroll down below the
Yes.
folders. There it
Yeah.
is.
Where? Yeah. Okay.
You went past it.
Yeah. Okay. I see it. Yeah.
There it is.
I'm in, coach. I'm in, coach.
So this thing has its own. So you can see here, you can see here it has its own loader, and files under this. So like the about page, get loaded this data, and this data. This is one of those places where we're doing some of this load. So this load MDX route file attributes is something I wrote, but it's
Okay.
like a hacky thing that I had to do. But still, it's pages. So this about page lives inside this simple MDX folder, but it doesn't have simple MDX in the route, like in the URL, I mean. So
Yeah. Yeah.
the URL is just slash about, but we can still attach a bunch of stuff to it without any,
Okay. Gotcha. And there's
without changing the URL and stuff. If that
okay.
makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then I know you don't have the nested routes in here because you haven't needed it, I guess, with the data that you have here so far or the breakdown. But that definitely seems interesting to me too, because you can have I believe it's the outlet component, and that allows you
Yeah,
to.
there's an outlet on this page if you scroll down.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, right there. So we're not doing anything super fancy, and it like that's outlet is how you have nested routes, and I think it's called root. If you open up root.jsx, that's like the top level thing, right? Not route, root, like ROOT,
As
American root.
sorry, I'm mixing French here. Sorry,
Yeah, I know.
pardon, mes amis, pardon, pardon.
But this is like the top level route, and this one has an outlet too. So this thing
Okay.
defines some stuff. This is like our layout, or like everything below this uses this layout. I mean, this is the 404 page, but
Yeah.
if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll get to our like basic output, everything below this, and you
Okay.
can.
It's still going.
I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff here because this is like the
Okay.
base layout basically. But here at all at the bottom is our
Yeah.
app, and this is like our page, and you can just see outlet is right there too. So
Yeah.
anytime you have outlet in a route, it will say keep outputting things deeper in deeper levels.
Okay.
So that's how you do nest routes. So
Okay.
really everything in effect is at least one nested level, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
okay, gotcha. Yeah. No, for sure. And yeah, no, it's making me more and more want to build something with Remix now. I'm not gonna build my blog with Remix because it's already built, and I honestly just don't have time to do that. But yeah, I got to build something with this now, aside from just the work stuff I've been doing. Because yeah, no, I definitely like this, and I just like what you were showing before there with again, initial page load is always server rendered with the data baked into the server rendered markup, and then just I don't know if they call it islands architecture in, because I don't know if it technically is islands architecture in Remix, but
No,
just
it's a little bit
basically
different than that, but there's
yeah.
definitely some shared concepts for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, really just only load JavaScript where you need to. Basically, that's just a general rule for all the web devs out there. Okay, cool. I honestly can't believe how long we've been talking, because like we're booked till 2:30 and it's already 2:10, and I know we were gonna talk about TypeScript and maybe some other stuff. We don't have to. It's all good. But I was gonna bring up TypeScript because well, one, I'll drop a link to the Virtual Coffee IO Twitch, but you and Kirk, who's one of the other members and volunteers of Virtual Coffee, you've been doing these TypeScript Twitch streams, and part of it you've been talking about migrating, I believe, the Virtual Coffee site to TypeScript with Remix.
Yeah, that's right. So I am a TypeScript novice, really. I mean, very much am. And so when I started this conversion from 11D to Remix,
Yeah,
Remix, when you start it from scratch, will give you the option to like they output a nice little template for you, and they'll give you the option of TypeScript or JavaScript. And so I chose
yeah,
JavaScript because I didn't want to learn two things at the same time. But the like I recently started down a TypeScript path at work, and I
Okay.
wanted to learn more. And I was like, I wanted to pick Kirk's brain, and I'm like, well, I might as well try to do some content, get
Yeah,
some
yeah,
content
yeah.
out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No, it's a great
so it's
idea.
going to be a good learning experience for me, and we can have some fun. And it's not like a high priority situation, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's the idea. There is slowly kind of convert the site to TypeScript
Okay,
and see where
gotcha.
that takes us.
Yeah. No, it's I've been doing TypeScript for a while. Like for folks that don't know, TypeScript's been around since 2012, believe it or not. I started doing TypeScript in 2015, fall 2015. Like it's kind of funny. Like I mean, I'm dating myself, but like VS Code used to be the only editor that would support TypeScript because it was from Microsoft. And this is just funny anecdote, but VS Code used to be very bare bones, like literally just an editor. Extensions didn't exist and stuff. And but anyways, I digress. But the neat thing about because I've converted, like I mean I've worked on big projects that use TypeScript, but I've also worked on big projects and moving them from JavaScript to TypeScript. And it's the kind of thing where, like, I mean, these are my opinion. If you're starting with a TypeScript project, I would make it as strict as possible. People have debates about that, but I think it makes sense if you're literally greenfield project, because then you're you get all the type safety. As soon as you start loosening things up, it's not that things are going to go sideways, but it's whatever strictness you run into, you're going to hit it right away because you're literally just creating things. And I understand why people loosen it, because if you've never worked in a type language, it can become very frustrating sometimes. And I didn't find the transition that difficult, because I was prior to, well, 20, like mid 2016 and prior, I was doing .NET, so I was doing C sharp. And for folks that don't know, C sharp is a .NET language from Microsoft, and the creator of that language is also the same creator of TypeScript, Anders Heiselsberg. So, and literally, like, TypeScript to me, like, for the most part, looks like C sharp. Like the big thing, I think one of the big things in TypeScript that might throw people off is generics and understanding them. I think that's one big thing. Um, but and we can talk about that a bit. But when you're when you come to, like, I need to, not need to, but I want to migrate some site, what big or small, I want to move it to TypeScript. You kind of have to go from the outside in. And what I mean by that is, like, maybe not leaf components, but say you have I don't know. The reason why you don't go from the middle out is because if you turn on TypeScript and then you say, like, I'm gonna make the main piece, like a TSX file or a .ts file, anything that it pulls in, if it's not typed, it's gonna start complaining. Whereas if you go out from the outside, and so, like, say, I don't know, say you have a design system, or maybe even if it's not a design system, just in your project you have some buttons or some components that you bring into other components. You can build those out in TypeScript first, and then once you have enough for, like, a particular page, you can say, okay, I'm going to convert that page to TypeScript. And then you kind of do it piecemeal. And there's the TypeScript compiler options, which you can tweak. So this is where you can, like, say stuff like, I want to allow JavaScript files. I don't want it to be as strict. So, for example, maybe as you're building out stuff, you'll let any slip in for now, just because because the app was working before. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think any should be in the code base eventually. Or if they are, they're probably wrapped in something that exposes something strongly typed. But basically, you can build it out at your own pace. And, like, one place I was at, it took us almost a year, and it was because, like, you're also doing feature development, and stuff. So
Right.
you have to kind of, like, if we're talking, like, more from a business context, not a personal project, you have to weigh in, like, you know we're building out something new. Okay, if possible, if we have all the pieces, let's do that all in TypeScript now. Versus I'm fixing a bug, maybe you still wait on converting that bit, but every time you just keep adding a bit and a bit, and then eventually it gets done and stuff. But and it's the type errors can be confusing sometimes. And
Yeah.
people are just like, damn it, it's like,
Yeah.
but there's a reason
Yeah.
why it's complaining, even if you don't understand it initially. There is a reason. So it's not just
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
trip you up. So
Yeah. No, there's a lot that's new for me. And, so and the work thing that I'm starting, so this was like what started this whole thing, right? Was a
yeah,
greenfield thing, and it was a component library for React components and React Native components, and so other people are going to be using it, right? And so like to be
yeah,
specific, we have a Next.js app, and now we have a React Native like iPhone, Android app that's going to be a
okay,
separate repository, a separate project, but we want it to look the same. So we're
yeah,
like, how do
gotcha.
we what's the best way to do that? And end up, with this like a middle ground component library that can export both things. And so having a thing that other people are using, that for me was it's not so much the type safety and stuff that was attractive to me. It's more of the,
Yeah,
okay, like VS Code will show you what parameters this thing is expecting and what those parameters actually
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you're using React component and uh, you don't just get a list of props. It'll like tell you what those props can be, what they can't be, what it
yeah.
expects, all of this tooling. And so Storybook, we're using Storybook to like have a docs page for it, and Storybook
Okay,
will automatically generate like props tables with comments and stuff from your types without having to do anything
okay,
extra. Like, and so I love Storybook, and for those of you who don't know, it's sort of a project to document your libraries or code or whatever. There's lots of different uses for it, but it's having a component library that is not like a first class citizen is one of these dangerous things,
mhm,
or like a design pattern system and things like that. In my experience, they
yeah,
get out of date really, really quick, right? Because you
yeah,
make the whole beautiful thing that everybody can look at, and then you start building features later, fixing bugs, all the stuff, and you don't go back and fix it, and or you don't go back and update the stories, and it just slides out of date and becomes more
yeah.
hassle than it's worth, right? But
No, no, for
in
sure.
this, using it, like combining it with TypeScript and using it more as a first class thing, the storybook itself, like the the I don't know, the actual like stuff around your components, is ancillary, but the
Hmm.
components stay up to date because you have, like, they are the component, like they are the actual things that are being displayed. So storybook is displaying this table of props and the default and like some notes on it, and those come straight from your
Yeah,
types, like that are attached to your actual components that you're actually using in the real app, and it's a really cool thing.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
that was like a light bulb moment for me. Was the teamwork aspect of it, of TypeScript, and like the tooling that goes around it, and the developer experience of using TypeScript.
Yeah,
So
no,
that was
definitely.
like one of the
It's
big
it's
features for me.
No, it's definitely one of the selling points for me too. The discoverability of things, So like folks are like IntelliSense has been around for a long time, but like you see these features pop up in more web editors over the past, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. But you get that IntelliSense from TypeScript. Like, even if like in the context of VS Code, at least, I can't speak for other editors. You're using TypeScript even when you're writing JavaScript, like even if you don't have TypeScript installed, because VS Code under the hood is actually using TypeScript to get you all that information. Like, so it's pulling in types to say, like, when you do, like, I don't know, you create a new element, and then you say element dot id, it pops up because it's the TypeScript types that are helping you drive that to find all that stuff. So the the discoverability is huge. The also it's documentation to some degree, and I'm not saying don't write documentation. That's not what I mean, but it ties into the discoverability. And the other thing I found really powerful is refactoring things. Um, like because like in the old, not I don't want to say the old days, but like before you'd be like, okay, well this JS this thing in JS that's like littered all over the project. I'm gonna just search and replace it with the new thing, and that may work or probably work. But with TypeScript, it's actually gonna, if you refactor something, it's gonna find all the references to it and update it. So there's stuff like that, and I gotta drop a. I did a series on Dev 2 a while ago. It started in 2017, but for anybody that's interested, it's the first post is just about consider using TypeScript. I'm not saying you should. I no, I think you should, but it's not like you're going to hell or something if you don't use TypeScript. It's nothing like that. It's just like I've found I can 100% say on a large application, it's been so much easier to work in. And I know people will probably say, well, I've worked in massive JavaScript code bases and never had a problem, which maybe so, but I'm just saying it just helps. That's all. And like anything, it's a tool at the end of the day, and not everybody likes the same tools, I guess. But one thing I would say about TypeScript as well is it's definitely gotten way more popular. A lot of library authors are using it now. The frameworks are like Remix is written in TypeScript, Svelte's written in TypeScript, React isn't as far as I know. I think they still use what's it called? It was their own flavor of type system. Started with an F.
Oh yeah, flow.
Flow. That's it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I don't. I'm assuming they still use that, but I'm not. I really don't know. I haven't looked at the React code base anytime recently. But
Mhm.
just there's a lot. I mean, Angular, since Angular 2, it's been TypeScript since day one. You could opt out of it, I think, in the beginning. I think nowadays you have to use TypeScript. I haven't done Angular in a long time, but so it's definitely gained a lot of adoption. So like I'm just thinking for folks like from a careers perspective, if you're doing front end or like back end JavaScript, it's definitely something to consider putting in the tool belt. There's newer things like Dino that are out, which is written in Rust and it uses TypeScript too. You can write JavaScript in TypeScript, but they prefer TypeScript there too. So like there's just a lot of things where I think it's a good thing to at least take a look at it is all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of confusing things for sure. So we we did the same thing that you suggested was started with leaf nodes or whatever you want to call started with
Yeah,
those
yeah.
lowest level things because because of all the reasons you said and um so far it's going good and we've kind of confused ourselves a couple times and figured it out and you know
Yeah,
we
yeah.
I think we're close
We
to going into some more interesting situations. We're about to um I think next we're going to be like trying to type an API interaction,
okay.
and write the types for like like what it's expecting, what shape of the data is supposed to come back,
Okay.
things like that, so we can use it down the line. So that's
Okay.
gonna be interesting to figure out.
Cool, cool. Well, I think that's like we're almost at time. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap things up. I'm gonna drop a link again to the Twitch for virtual coffee because next Tuesday. So on Tuesdays, I do TypeScript Tuesdays. It's Dan who's hanging with me and Kirk, another one of my friends. And like Dan was saying, they're going to be working on continuing to migrate some stuff in the Remix project for virtual coffee. So I definitely suggest checking that out. Also, just going to drop some shameless plugs for Dan. So he's on Twitter. Give him a follow if you want. He's got other links in there. Virtual Coffee's Twitter account, and there's also links to the site there. Um, yeah, before we go, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention, Dan, or we can just say hey.
Not
And
Yeah, not really. It was I really appreciate you having me on. This is always fun. I always like hanging out with you. So um, yeah, thanks again,
yeah,
and
likewise. Yeah,
we'll
no,
have
it's
to
great.
catch up. Maybe sometime we'll figure out our Twitch streams so that they're both,
Yeah, yeah, no, for
I feel
sure.
like we're circling around the ideal situation. We're getting close. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, cool, cool. Next week, I don't have anybody scheduled yet, but I have Becca, who's from Virtual Coffee as well, the creator of Virtual Coffee. She'll be on in 2 weeks. I think next week I might be doing a solo stream, just going over some debugging stuff in JavaScript and Dino. Maybe I'll have a guest. I don't know. That's still up in the air. But thanks again, everybody, for checking out the stream. Appreciate it. And I will see you all next week.